Welcome. Another edition of the All 32 Pod. Mike Giardi here, Will Parkinson there. Pleased to have you with us. As a reminder, please like, subscribe, leave reviews. Helps us build the brand. Very excited because now, what are we? We're recording this on Thursday afternoon. We're a week or so away from football, like real football. None of the preseason with cover 3 basic and like none of this stuff. We're getting disguises. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, we're ready to roll here, man. It's our last division preview. Then we'll go into some predictions, kind of preview the games next week. Like, we got a lot going. Our backyard for these divisions. So a lot of exciting stuff. This will be probably our most in-depth pod, I would say.
Yeah. Before I tell you who the sponsors of the program are, 2 quick ones for you. Russell Wilson, quarterback. Pittsburgh, he wins the job over Justin Fields. Turns out that really wasn't much of a competition. He played 5 snaps in the preseason finale. He's the anointed one there. Taylor Heineke getting traded from Atlanta, which obviously has depth at the quarterback position with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix, gets traded over to the Chargers, who needed a backup. Easton Stick not having a very good preseason, and Justin Herbert, who knows about the foot. You got to be better prepared there. Heineke gives him a little bit of juice, a little bit more than Easton Stick did.
Yeah, no real surprises there. Russ is who he is. I don't think anyone's like thrilled to go watch Russell Wilson play football at this point in his career, but hey, Steelers made a choice, probably the safer choice to start the year. I would not be shocked if we see Justin Fields at some point, although I'm not sure how much of an upgrade that'll be. And on the Heineke front, he's a cat with 9 lives. He'll go anywhere. He can get lightning in a bottle and probably living a little bit off that 2020 the Bucs loss. With the Commanders.
He's a poor man's Gardner Minshew. I don't know that anybody wants to be a poor man's Gardner Minshew, but I guess if you're in the league for 10 years, you're making good backup money, and he got some good money from Atlanta. That's not a place to be. All right, as a reminder, this program brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network, and Game Time. Best tickets, best prices that get you in to see any event you want to see. Will and I use both. We love both. Like, that's just trust us. Trust us when I tell you that's the route you want to go. We want to start the AFC East. We're gonna get into our backyard, as you mentioned, and I think it's a perfect place to start because the biggest news, although not surprising, is the Patriots on Thursday announcing that Jacoby Brissett will be the starter for the season, was the term that Jerod Mayo used, although again threw the reel back and kind of reeled that back in, saying if he plays the way we want. In other words, at some point, Drake May is going to play. I shouldn't have said what I said, but I did. Not surprised. Drake made a real good push here the final 2 weeks, basically from the Eagles preseason game through the Washington preseason game. But Brissett, as Mayo had talked to us a week ago, with the idea of you don't just grade it on this, even though Mayo had said he's been outplaying Brissett. It's the whole body of work. And if you go back to the spring, and of course Brissett's experience in the Alex Van Pelt Cleveland system, where he had probably his best year as a pro playing for Deshaun Watson, this is where it was going to go. This was never a quarterback competition, as much as they kept trying to use that word. You can't have a quarterback competition when Drake May doesn't get any reps with the ones, and Drake May did not get any reps with the ones. And even as he was making his push, they might have dicked around a little bit here. He had 3 snaps with the first offensive line, and he handed the ball off 3 times, and they were going 60%, not 100. It just never was what Mayo wanted it or tried to claim it as. And maybe that's some people will read into that. Maybe that's Mayo saying, I want it. I want to push this. I think maybe should be the starter. And there are people, including Alex Van Pelt, who, as he termed, head coach offense, and maybe Elliott Wolf, who has past history with Van Pelt as well, said, hey, look, no. We're not risking the number 3 pick with our offensive line in tatters. Let's fix that first. That's what we signed Jacoby for, to be the $8 million placeholder and maybe, quite frankly, be a human pinata back there for a little while until we get that settled. And then, as we mentioned, maybe week 5 is the plan that makes the most sense to get Drake May in there.
Yeah, a couple of different things. You mentioned that there. I wonder how much the Patriots looked at kind of the Zach Wilson situation with the Jets in terms of rough offensive line, new defensive head coach, younger GM or newer GM, and the offensive line being a mess. And the Jets kind of just started Zach right away and threw him out there. And again, we know Zach Wilson's very bad at football, but it did not help, obviously, the situation he was in as a rookie. He obviously got much better the last 2 years and he failed, but at least as a rookie, we obviously saw that. So Yeah, I think this is probably the right call. I mentioned it on our last pod. I think getting Drake Maye 8+ starts this year, I think, is crucial. I don't know that it needs to be 17 starts. The one thing I will say with Brissett that makes me – they have a different play style, and I think that is one thing I'd just be curious to see how the offensive line looks. I think Drake Maye will avoid more sacks. I think he'll use his legs and do different things. I think the sack numbers will not be great under Brissett because he doesn't move well. Not that he's the most stationary guy, but
he holds the ball a lot.
He holds the ball a lot, and it's just not going to be hyper athletic, right? So again, I think this is the right call. The Patriots trying to do the right thing here. They want to let him grow and develop, and I do think, again, I mentioned it. You want to find a soft landing spot. Could that be week 5? Could that be week 8, week 10, whatever it may be? But I will be really interested to see, like, if Brissett goes out there week 1 and doesn't look good, how loud is it going to get and how much are they going to be under pressure, right? Because, again, you're selling a fan base on, hey, we're not going to be great this year. And if anything, we're going to be pretty bad. But our quarterback isn't playing either. And as much as that might be the smart long-term play, Boston's a passionate sports city. You know, you always just think to yourself, everything sounds good in theory. And then what happens again, week 2, week 3?
What happens? You have a plan until you get punched in the mouth.
The Patriots, they start 1-2, 0-3, and they lose to the Jets, who again they lost to the Jets for the first time in like 8 years last year, and the game didn't matter. But now the game does matter, and you go and lose, I don't know, 34-10, and Brissett looks terrible. How do you tell the fan base, hey, we're losing? And so I'm going to be curious to see how patient are they going to be. It's easy to start him week 1. Or not start Drake Maye week 1. But like we get to week 4, week 5, it's going to get louder and louder no matter how good Jacoby plays.
So there's a bunch of things that I've thought about here over the last couple of weeks and even in the last few days. For instance, the push to start Drake Maye, and like I said, I've been talking about this. I'd never felt like it was a competition, so this didn't surprise me in the least bit. But like, if you start Drake Maye in week 1 and you're getting your ass kicked, and it's the second quarter and you're down 21-0 in Cincinnati, 24-0. He's thrown 2 picks. He's fumbled 2 snaps. Like, the right thing to do for your team is to put him on the bench and put Jacoby Brissett in there. But in the long-term future of your franchise and Drake Maye, do you really want to put the guy on the bench? And like, so if he gets off to this sort of start, you can't, and you have to think about these things. You have to think about it in detail. Like, it's one thing to go from Brissett to Maye. If Brissett's the one stinking up the joint, even if it's in week 1 in Cincinnati, like, hey, it's 24-0 in the third quarter. You know what? Screw it. Let's put Drake in there. Doesn't mean Drake's starting next week, but he's going to get some experience. The other team sort of let their foot off the gas pedal a little bit. Let's get him some reps. And who knows? Maybe he goes out, balls out completely, and then you have a decision to make for week 2. I think the other part of this is, and you brought it up, you're getting off to this slow start. So week 2 is their home opener. It's against Seattle. Mike McDonald, terrific defensive mind, doesn't have his full personnel yet, but like, I expect that to be a tough game regardless. What if Brissett's starting and you're struggling? I think it'd be pretty early you're going to hear the boo birds. You started to hear him last year. You heard him the year before with Mac. Like, there's not a lot of patience here. And they're at this stage of the process, there should be patience. Like that should be the thing at this point, guys. You're not winning 10 games. And I know you want to see Drake, but like, take the big view. But fans, when they're drinking, 16-ounce buds for, $20 a pop, and they'd spent 3 hours in the parking lot in the sunshine in September, getting all ramped up for the game, getting all lubed up, like, they're going to boo. And you got to be strong, and you got to be like, no, we have a plan and we're sticking to it. And it feels like, even though they've kept saying plan, like I said, it feels like there's a little bit of a divide about who wants what right now. And those are conversations that have to be had. And it's not a great sign to me if there is already a little bit of fracture in like how they want to go about this and the way it sort of played out this summer, especially the last couple of weeks. It definitely feels that way. I know they're trying to push back. It's collaborative. We're thinking together. Your coach keeps saying things that don't really necessarily jibe with what you've been trying to as a team and a franchise have been trying to preach here the last 4 months. So
yeah,
the
one other thing I just want to mention on this is that, like, I think it's a good thing that Drake Maye got better each week in the preseason. Again, super talented, a guy that a lot of people argued for months he could have been the first overall pick, let alone, ended up going 3 in the whole 9 yards. So the Patriots are in a good spot from that perspective. The offensive coordinator search, the Brandon Ayuk thing, there's a lot of things that point to like Drake Maye showing something this year for the Patriots. And we talked about this with a lot of different teams, and I get it. The Patriots are one of those where it's so crucial Drake Maye shows something because all this cap space, all these draft picks, all this different stuff. This young core of receivers, who knows if they'll end up being good, but there's obviously a core here that they've they bring in Baker, they bring in Polk, obviously, and different guys like that to grow with him and those whole 9 yards. Like next off, if Brandon Ayuk doesn't get traded and plays on the 1 year deal or whatever, and next off season, it's like, oh man, Drake May's pretty good. And like, they'll still give me 30+ million and the whole thing. We're having a different conversation. So I just think that's something that's important there. And obviously Bailey Zappi no longer in that quarterback room, something we had mentioned, as well. Obviously Joe Milton kind of beat him out for that, QB4 job, I guess, QB3, whatever, QB3 job. So the Patriots are just in an interesting spot. I don't think they're going to be very good, but I also don't think that they're going to be they're going to be a team that like maybe wins 4 games, but is really competitive in a lot of games where their defense really stout, gives up 3 points, not 7, creates turnovers, things like that. And then offensively, again, it's get creative, try to run the football. It's just the offensive line is the one, even more so than the playmakers. I think the offensive line is my biggest question mark about this team.
Yeah, it's the one thing. So, I kind of pushed back all offseason about the idea that they were going to be able to fix quarterback, receiver, and tackle in particular in one offseason, especially when you looked at the free agent class of tackles, and there was one good one who didn't want to come play for the 4-13 Patriots. He wanted to go play for a team in the Jets that he thinks he has a chance to win a Super Bowl, and Tyron Smith. Other than that, it was Jonah Williams was probably the next best guy. He got a short term, like 2 for $30, I think it was, in Arizona, maybe 18 guaranteed. I would have done that, even though I don't think Jonah Williams is the long-term answer, but a short-term contract, again, with all this space. You know what? If after year 1, you're like, he's not the guy, okay, fine. Guess what? Juju Smith, you cut him. You can do that. You don't want to make a ton of decisions like that, but in the short term, let's beef this thing up. They kind of get caught with their pants around their ankles a little bit during the draft process when the tackles started to go in the 50s. They didn't trade up. They settle on Caden Wallace at 68, a right tackle for his entirety of his career at Penn State, and made the noise that could he play left tackle? Yeah, we think he can. Well, to this point, he's not the left tackle. The left tackle until he got hurt was Vidarian Lowe, who was a punchline to a lot of jokes last year. And to his credit, he's gotten a lot better this summer. But I don't think anybody's idea of how are we fixing the offensive line going into Drake May's rookie season involved Vidarian Lowe playing a prominent role, and he very well might. So
were you surprised they held on to Onwenu? Like looking back at it, like were you surprised they were able to do that and he came back? I'm surprised
he came back, honestly. Yeah. And maybe he read his agent got, hey, this is what you're going to get out there, and they're willing to give you more. And obviously, them, they know you, sort of thing. There's been talk that he did not come back to camp in the greatest shape, which he pushed back on yesterday in a report to Karen Garriga and Mass Live. I think it was Mike Lombardi, who has many access to grind, especially with the Patriots having deposed his best buddy there, Bill Belichick. But he said he was 80 pounds overweight. Now, I think he looked big. 80 pounds overweight is ginormous.
Especially when you're already 350.
Yeah. And he said, that just seems like, he said, and when it was like, that's like, what are we doing? Like, that just sounds made up. Well, it probably was, or to a certain degree. But I'm not surprised in the sense that, I'm surprised he came back, but I'm not surprised they tried to pay him because I think they realized, like, we know what he is. We know he's a good guard. We know he can play tackle. Maybe that's not his preferred spot for both him personally and maybe for us as well in terms of what we're going to get out of him. But, like, aside from David Andrews, he's the best offensive lineman we have. You can't let him walk out the door. And Andrews might be, he's 31, 32. Like, this could be the end of the road for him. He got an extra year on the contract. So maybe you're looking at a 2-year window, but can he continue to be the player that he's been at center? I don't know. So it's just like, how many spots can we fix? I think they looked at it and said, he might be one of the best guys on the market. We know him. Let's just pay him. We keep him here. And now we've answered a question, like, he can play guard, he can play tackle, and we can just leave that be if need be. But they're not good enough at tackle. It's going to be in a piece I have for Boston Sports Journal for the weekend in my weekend notes, where I was talking to an exec and he was like, for this thing to get kickstarted and for them to get back to a path of respectability, obviously you have to hit May. That, like, for a quick turnaround, like if May gives them some juice, you can convince yourself that next year you could be fighting for a playoff spot, not winning, but fighting for a playoff spot, which, it'll have been a couple of years. And then he pointed to Jalen Polk and he pointed to Caden Wallace, who's picked second round, third round, right? He said, like, if those guys are good players, don't have to be great players, but if they're good players, you say, Jalen Polk's my number 2, number 3 receiver, and he's going to be that guy for the next 5 years. And it's on this 4 years. He's going to be on this rookie contract, and we'll see if we want to go further. But if he can give you Jacoby Myers-like production in year 2 or year 3, okay, good place. If Caden Wallace can be your starter at right tackle, not even left tackle, just a right tackle on a rookie contract, third round pick, good place. You have, the ability now to say, we go into the next offseason, figure you're going to have a high draft pick. We can go get a left tackle, or you know what? There's a receiver that at 4 that we can't pass up. That's finally, for the first time since Randy Moss or Gronk is the tight end, but like, you have to defend this guy. Teams have to plan for this guy. They still don't have that guy on their roster. So that would really help kickstart their development. So to me, this year, as much as it probably bums Pats fans out because you want to win games, and I know, Jerod Mayo doesn't want to go 2-15. At the same time, like, all that really matters is that they show us that they are competent coaches and that they didn't make a mistake in hiring Jerod and putting this staff together, and that Drake May and some of the younger players are players. And then, okay, here's your foundation. We brought back these veterans from the 4-13 team that some of them are good players, some of them are okay players, but now we have that foundation, we have the young foundation, and now we're looking for, like, let's go hit the home run with the receiver. Let's go hit the home run with the tackle. And to your point, maybe all of a sudden now in free agency, teams look at you and go, a guy looks at you and says, you know what, I don't know if I want to live in Foxborough, but if they're going to give me, the third best contract for a swing tackle, a tight end, whatever position it is, I can do that, because Drake May is going to be fun. There's pieces here. The coach looks like he knows what he's doing, and maybe we are playing for something in a year or two. So I think that's really what it comes down to. It's about the development of the young kids. They got to get it right, and they got to hope they got it right in the draft.
Yeah, no, 100%. You mean even a Baker, there's another guy, Javon Baker, who I liked coming out of the draft. Obviously, I think a lot of people were quite high on him. What's Pop Douglas going to be? Is he a guy that's just a gadget guy? Is he a guy that's going to develop into a legit receiver in the league? Like, what is he? Obviously, I think, defensively, look, the Barmore situation sucks. There's no doubt about it. We'll see what happens there. Obviously, you have more insight into that. But, like, I don't know if we'll see him this year. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But either way, it's like, get him ready to go for 2025. At some level, I think is kind of, where my head would be at. What kind of season you get at Josh Uche? Like, is he a guy you bringing back next year on a 3-year, $50 million extension, the way Bryce Huff just got paid, because he looks like the player of 2 years ago? Or is he a guy that, like, he's going to just be a returning 1 year, $7 million a year guy? I look at, Kyle Duggar, obviously they paid, Jabril Peppers has been there now for a couple of years. He's a guy who obviously he is who he is, at this point in his career.
I had to tell, by the way, I walked up to Peppers. I was talking to a buddy of mine who works for Baltimore in football ops. And he's like, we were just shooting the crap. And he's like, those 2 safeties there, because they hit the shit out of you.
Yeah, Jabril Peppers.
So I walked up to Peppers. I told him that, big grin on his face. He said, I like that. Yeah. It's like, that's their reputation. Yeah, they like to bring it.
Christian Gonzalez, I think, outside of the rookies, is the guy that I'm most intrigued by. And he's just an interesting case, because I felt like there was no, I even made the argument, like, the Jets were picking at 13 and then 15, obviously. And I'm like, should you just take Christian Gonzalez here and have, like, the craziest cornerback room we've seen in some time and just figure it out? Again, they obviously didn't do that. The Patriots ended up with him, but probably would have been stupid team building, obviously, again. But so was taking an edge rusher at 15 when you had 19 of them. So my point being that we got really excited last year about 3.5 games, 3.5 games, and all rightfully deserved. He was awesome. He was fun to watch. He's a great athlete. I still am some question marks around physically, in terms of, like, the body type and just hitting people and, like, getting banged up, which we obviously saw happen. but there's no doubt of true skill. Like, could be an all-pro level player at some point in his career. Can you get 16, 17 games out of him? Because if you do, you're going into year 3 going, man, like, we feel awesome about Christian Gonzalez, and like, he is a cornerstone blue chip. You know, Bill Simmons loves the blue chipper, red chipper, that whole thing. Like, he could be a legit blue chip guy, and him and Barmore is the, you know, to copy the Jets a little bit in the sense, like the Sauce and Quinn Williams. I don't think Barmore is on that level, but still, you know, hey, we got the D tackle, we got the corner, we have the safety, and, you know, a Duggar and chess piece, and Jabril Pepper still hits, and we know Jerod Mayo can coach defense. Like, we feel pretty good. I mean, again, I think the one other thing I worry about with this Patriots team, and I think this will be a big learning year, is like, what is Jerod Mayo? Because I think we kind of know what Alex Van Pelt is. We've never really seen him call plays, obviously, in the last 15 years, but he's been around quite a bit. We know kind of what he is. Patriots, as much as Bill as a GM, and I've said this a million times, I know everyone said this, as much as a GM, he lost the plot a little bit. And I think as a guy getting too involved in the offense, lost the plot a little bit. No doubt about it. All these things are true. Patriots fans know it better than anybody. Defensively, he could still F you up in 800 different ways to Sunday. And they play a rookie quarterback, no matter who it was. I guess really outside of Tua, weirdly, just demolished all these young quarterbacks. He broke 800 Jets quarterbacks' brains. He broke Josh Allen's brain all the time, even last year. And that bad Patriots team still, Buffalo comes in and they, like, I don't know, they made Josh look bad. Like, I just don't think we're appreciating enough how amazing Bill was at defensive, you know, scheme wise. And I'm interested. I'm like really genuinely excited to see what Jerod Mayo is going to be like Sundays when it's on you, buddy. Like, it's all you, man. Like, what do you got? Like, you were a great player. You said all the right things. You've done all the right things. You got yourself into this position. No matter what Patriots fans feel about Bill right now, at the end of the day, you are following the most unfollowable person possible. And similar to Mac, like, if you just show something in the beginning, people are going to latch on you and be like, oh man, like, here we go. We got it. So yeah, I think, again, it comes down to Maye, comes down to those rookie receivers, as you mentioned, comes down to Gonzalez and Mayo. And it's like, can we have a nice little core here of, we got the coach, got the quarterback, we have a cornerstone or 2 on defense. We got some nice young pieces on offense. If we get 2 or 3 offensive linemen in free agency in the draft next year, a receiver and, you know, a linebacker, and Drake takes a step, like, we're a playoff team in 12 months. That should be the goal for the Patriots. Again, maybe Drake May comes in week 4 and CJ Stroud. I don't know. But there's a better chance he's closer to like Zach Wilson year 1. And we're like, we need to get this guy number 1. We got to get the offensive line right. That's kind of where I'm at with the Patriots. Yeah,
I mean, I sort of look at just quickly, like the Bills, Josh Allen, 52% as a passer his rookie year. He was a wild stallion. Yes. You saw some things that were awe-inspiring, and you saw some throws and plays. You were like, what in the wide world of sports was he doing there? I mean, I honestly didn't think the guy that I saw with the Buffalo Bills in year 1 would even remotely come close to what he did in year 3 and beyond. But, credit to him and credit to their development and all that part. But like, I could see it being that rugged. You just have to be able to live through it and continue to develop and hope that, as everything I've heard, and when I've talked to people and now talking to him, like, he seems pretty unflappable. Like, it's not going to be perfect on the field, but I'm not going to lose my confidence. I'm a gunslinger. I'm going to keep ripping it. And that's a good sort of model to have when you might struggle.
PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. They've got over 5 million active members. Look, it is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Now, unlike all the other apps, PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. That's it. Now, you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. And 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss the steal on PrizePicks because it's gone when September ends. Now, here's an example of a player projection lineup. You could be going Tyreek Hill for more than 90 receiving yards or Dak Prescott for more than 263 passing yards. On the other end, Josh Allen for less than 240 passing yards and CeeDee Lamb for more than 96 receiving yards. You like those picks? So download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game.
Let's move to, I think the Miami Dolphins are they're a playoff team. They're right there on the line. They were 11-6 last year, 6th in DVOA, 2nd on offense, 19th on defense. And I think they're once again in position to have a similar type year. I guess to me, the big thing for them is, can you stop being a pushover in December and January? Because they get off to these unbelievable starts. The league, McDaniel has reinvented their offense 2 years running to start the year, and 70 points against Denver, and they just do stuff, and we're all like, oh my God, this is the year. And then slowly but surely, people start to figure him out. Tua is still not, he's getting paid like he's elite, still not in that category for me. And then, by the time January rolls around, they're limping. They're lucky they get in the playoffs, or they get in the playoffs and they lose. They just don't have enough juice. This year, it's, can you finally deliver on the hype when it matters the most?
November 3rd, Dolphins at Bills. November 11th, Dolphins at Rams. They come home to the Cupcake Raiders and Patriots, and then go at Green Bay, home to the Jets, at Houston, home to San Francisco, at Cleveland, away at Jets.
It's tough.
Right before that, they should go on a really nice roll. Seattle.
They might need to.
At Seattle early in the year. We'll see. It's going to be early for Seattle. I don't know how good they're going to be yet. We talked about them a lot. I think they'll be much better later in the year. Then they get Tennessee at home, New England, Indy, but Indy inside. We know that'll be a track meet. Arizona. It's Dolphins probably win all 5, if not 4 of the 5 of those games. But then there's 7 or 8 right after that where you're like, do they win 4? It comes down to me and a couple of different things with Miami. I think the things we don't talk about enough are how prolific that offense is when it gets rolling. There's very few teams that match up well with them. I think New England has not matched up well. I think Buffalo obviously matches up well with them because they need them, live underneath, and they take some of that stuff away from Tua and a lot of that, cover 2 shell, and they mix and match coverages. The Jets match up well with Miami generally, although we haven't really seen the Jets Miami play a fully healthy versus fully healthy team. It's like right. Tua has been out, or Rodgers or Zach or whatever. They're just, those teams have not played a real legit game in so long that kind of is hard to look at. We obviously saw Kansas City and stuff again, man blissing and cold and stuff, but most teams don't match up with them. The running back room's awesome, really awesome. A-Chain's fantastic. We don't talk enough about him. Again, injuries.
Yeah,
they got screwed.
The amount of speed is stupid.
Speed's stupid. I think the receivers are awesome. Probably the best duo, if not one of the 3 or 4 best duos. I still don't understand the Odell signing. I thought that was such a classic. He is definitely not on the football is my biggest thing. He won a title now. He's made all the money. I don't get it. He's on PUP still. He didn't look great to me a year ago, and I don't know that he's going to look great this year. They lost a lot on defense. They did get some guys back. They got Chubb and Phillips back. I think Chubb's still on PUP if I'm not mistaken. Start the year, but Jalen Phillips, another guy, the Achilles, and if I'm not mistaken, him and Rodgers, at least Rodgers, I think reached out to him at some extent, and we'll see how that kind of he looks. He was obviously coming on quite strong last year. They lose Van Ginkel. I think that was a big, kind of a big deal there. No more Xavier Howard, Jalen Ramsey, a year older. The safety should be healthy this year. Brought in David Long, obviously. They lose Christian Wilkins. The offensive line's lost some pieces. This is where it come down to me with Miami. There's a world in which they win 11 or 12 games. They start out really hot again. They're 8-3, 9-3. And the rest, the Bills and Jets are beating up on each other a little bit. And Rodgers misses a month. And Josh Allen has a rough month like he kind of always does before he goes superhuman. And then Miami went to the division. They won 11 or 12 games, and they figure it out. My biggest thing with Miami that just is hard for me to get there with them is that it feels like when things go wrong, they go really wrong for them. And the offensive line's a problem. like it's just a problem. Losing Vic Fangio is a huge plus for Miami. Don't get me wrong. Like those players hated him. Did not get along well. Great defensive mind, but like kind of a great defensive mind 5 or 6 years ago. And we'll get to Fangio when we talk about the NFCs, because I actually think this is going to be a problem for Philly. So I don't know how to explain it. And it's like not bashing Tua. Tyreek started to get a lot of these banged up injuries. Him and Waddle feel like there's a lot of times where like they're in a game, they're out of a game, they're back in the game, they're out of the game, and it kind of throws them off. I don't know where to
call
land
that
on
the
them.
Debo Samuel.
Yeah, I don't know where that's land on them. Like I feel like I'm gonna end up landing on they win 10 games and they're like the 7 seed or the 6 seed, and we don't feel great about them, and they have to go to Kansas City or something again, or Cincinnati or New England or Buffalo. I mean, Jets or Buffalo, and they lose in the wild card round. At some point, and Kyle Brandt brought this up, and we talked about this, and the coach under most pressure, and I agree. Like at some point, McDaniel's been this guy we've just hyped up over and over again, and I get all of it, but he's kind of got to win a playoff game this year, because right. I do feel like it's 2 years in a row of like, woo, it's a big roller coaster ride, and it doesn't end so well. So I said a lot there, and again, it sounds like I'm being pessimistic on Miami. I just feel like we just keep talking Tyreek, Tua, Mostert, A-Chain, and Waddle, and we don't really mention, like, I don't know, they need Chop Robinson to be good right away, and I don't know if he's going to be good right away in real life games.
I wrote down a couple things that we haven't touched on as I was sort of reviewing them and looking forward to the season. The O-line is one, right? That it's dicey. You know, Armstead is a Pro Bowl player. He's 33, thought long and hard about retiring, has had, you know, a load of injuries. Like, you can't depend on him to play 17 games in playoffs. So you better hope that when he gets hurt, it's not a season-ending thing and it happens somewhere closer to the beginning and then it does the end. Austin Jackson on the other side is a solid football player, but their interior, not good. Connor Williams no longer there. Robert Hunt obviously left in free agency. Like, those are concerns. Tua, not the biggest guy. You talk about smaller quarterbacks. What do teams like to do? What did Carolina decide to? How are we going to save Bryce Young? We're going to hire an offensive-minded head coach, but we're also going to get massive on the inside and try to give him, you know, the ability to see around people, and because it's, you know, it's a challenge. So I just don't think that their line is very good, and I think it could be a problem for them. I understand why Tua felt the way he did about Brian Flores. I don't know why he had to bring it up again. He put more eyes on himself, and you think, well, whatever, you know, his coach.
And the offensive line comment, I don't care who's in front of me. I get the ball out fast. It's like you clearly don't trust your offensive line, buddy.
Right. So I just didn't like it. I think it puts more eyes on him. And, oh, by the way, the coach that treats you like you're his pet and he loves you and says all these wonderful things about you, you won more games for Brian Flores than you have won for Mike McDaniel, just as a starter. Just, again, and that's not Flores clearly was emotional about what happened and responded to it and said, took some blame. Like, you know, I obviously have to look inward and try to figure out how to be better. But I don't know. I don't know why we're talking about it. You got your contract, you got your team, you got the coach you want. Like, just quiet. It's over. It happened.
It's like an ex who gets like married, or he's like happily married and having a great time and bought the house and the kids and all that stuff. And you're like, you're still obsessing over this? Like,
yeah,
what?
stop.
Are you over it or not?
Yeah, stop scrolling on Instagram to see what your ex is doing. You're good. You're in a great place. And then you mentioned Fangio leaving. Anthony Weaver is the defensive coordinator. They bring him in from Baltimore. He's been a defensive coordinator once before for 1 year. It was in Houston, 2020. Care to guess what the DVOA of the Houston Texans defense was?
I'm going to go 31st.
Bingo. You nailed it right on the head. So, look, obviously went to Baltimore, was under Mike McDonald. You know, there's that whole tree now. But, like, I don't know that we don't know. We know he's been a good position coach, but in his 1 year as DC, not good. And, look, their defense isn't awesome. And you mentioned the injuries. So, like, he's going to have his hands full. So, kind of with you, I think I expect another fast start. I expect ridiculous offensive numbers. And then I expect when late November, December, and January roll around that they're just not scoring at that same pace. And some of these guys are hurt. Some of the fast guys don't like the cold. They don't like this, that, and the other thing. And they're in third place again. And, you know, hey, great, you make the playoffs. But at some point, with what you've invested in Tua, Waddle now, and Hill, like, they're supposed to take you over the top. So
yeah,
you're running.
You're
running out of time in that regard in terms of the money.
I think they're a playoff team, but but barely. I don't view them. Thought they were better last year personally, and they fell apart unfortunately.
All right, this might make you, I don't know, maybe it makes you nervous if you're superstitious. But as I was handicapping the races, I settled on Buffalo as the number 2 team. And I don't believe, like some people, that Buffalo is going to take this dramatic step back. There's a lot of people that think there's going to be some serious regression. 11-6 last year, turned it on in the second half. After they made the switch to Joe Brady, they fired Ken Dorsey, the offensive coordinator, ran the ball a crap ton more, which is something that Sean McDermott has bitched and moaned about. When Daboll was the offensive coordinator, when Dorsey was the offensive coordinator, he is this old school, I want to run the football. Joe Brady did that for him, and James Cook exploded and had a great year. I think he's poised to be one of the best backs in the league. They draft Ray Davis, who's a nice little, bowling ball. We like, you and I, big fans of him in terms of how his running style. So they have depth at that position. But no Diggs. And granted, they phased him out. So when they went on their run, Stephon Diggs was not a massive part of that. We know that there was a lot of drama with him over the last 2 years. I'm still not entirely sure what the drama was all about, because up until the second half of last year, he remained one of the most targeted wide receivers in all of football. So I don't know, Steph. I don't know. But in his place, they draft Keon Coleman in the first round. Khalil Shakir came on great last year. Looks like he might be their number 1. 5th round pick out of Boise, might be their number 1 receiver. Not that can't be done. Amon-Ra St. Brown was a 4th round pick. Julian Edelman was a 6th round pick. Yeah, it's all 7th round pick. It's all possible. But it's shaping up, even though they want to run the football more and they have the pieces to run the football more, it's shaping up like there's even more than ever on Josh Allen's shoulders in terms of, well, now you don't have the elite guy on the outside. Maybe Keon Coleman can be that guy. Maybe Shakir develops into that guy. But, you knew you had Diggs. You knew what he was, and then you took off when Diggs got there. Year 3, they make that deal. He goes from 59% passer from year 2 to 70% in year 3. Unheard of jump. He's maintained that sort of level. He's a gunslinger. He's got that little cowboy quarterback in him, right? He will make some throws that you don't think that a guy with his experience and talent should, but he also believes in his talent. And I think that's sometimes why he makes those throws. But I think even with the idea of we're going to run the ball more, I think when push comes to shove on 3rd down, okay, Josh, it's up to you again. Yeah, we gave you less than you've had. Can you do more?
Yeah, a couple of different things. As always, I love to always intro with that. Like a lot of what they've done in terms of, hey, we're going to give Josh Allen an offensive coordinator he's comfortable with. Obviously once Daboll moved on, him and Dorsey, obviously it was Dorsey. I thought, the numbers under Dorsey and the DVOA stuff was awesome, but obviously there was kind of some disconnect there in terms of Sean versus Josh versus some of the mistakes, et cetera. Josh has been a big game player. I think that's one of those false narratives. He has been really good in the playoffs in a lot of senses. And, they've been unlucky in times, and they've made, one error, kick it here, or a defensive thing here, or one fumble here, or whatever it is. All fair. Josh is probably the 2nd or 3rd best quarterback in the league. They have him in his prime. He's literally going to be peak Josh Allen for the next couple of years. I mean, obviously, again, the NFL is different now than it's ever been. When you're in your 30s, that doesn't mean you're not going to be good. So eventually we'll get there, but I don't know. There's a lot of pressure on Sean McDermott. It feels like if it doesn't go well this year, it's probably time to shake it up a little bit. I felt like last year at points, it was what are we doing? And then they obviously go on a run. They beat Dallas by 1,000 points, and they smoked the Jets with Zach Wilson. And it was they're off to the races. They go down to Miami, win. And, hey, if Tyler Bass makes that kick, do the Bills figure out a way to win that game? I don't know. We'll never know, but there's a chance there. I'm just struggling with Buffalo to be quite as good as they were, because I feel like we're relying on a lot of things, and a lot of the problems with Josh Allen, where they do come up at times, whereas he has to be a superhero and he makes interesting decisions. He's very Brett Favre-ish, where when it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's really freaking bad. Brett Favre, Rams playoff game in 2002 or 2003, whatever that was, when Favre threw 4 touchdowns, 6 picks. It's what the hell, man? What are you doing? And Josh has a little of that in him. He just does. Week 1 last year is a perfect example. Goes down, 2 touchdowns, they're at 13-0 or whatever it was. And then he also 3 picks and a fumble. And you're like, what just happened here? And then he goes down the field again and gets them points in 20 seconds. And then, my point just being, Josh is who he is. I think he's overly criticized sometimes. I think about people that defend him, they just like blindly defend him, and he has not gotten to a title yet, and that's a big deal. I like Shakir. I like Dawson Knox. I obviously, I personally think Kincaid's going to be a really nice player. Yeah. Curtis Samuels is who he is at this point. I don't know. Keon Coleman might be good. I'm definitely a little concerned about, he's not a big separator, and sometimes those guys take a little while, when they come in the league. Defensively, I think they're going to take a step back. And it's just the thing with me with Buffalo is they've been so dominant, and they have this kind of, 4 or 5 year run here where they've destroyed this division. They have. And even if people have got out in the hotter starts, they figured it out. I just feel like they're a step worse than they were a year ago, or 2 or 3 steps worse. And even if Josh is 2 or 3 steps better at points, and he's more COVID Josh, where like he was just superhuman, even though he was awesome. Again, he was awesome last year, but James Cook's going to be good. They'll run the football, but when it comes push comes to shove, like you just know Josh is going to be superhero for better or for worse. And I don't know the talent around him. Maybe they're a team that's involved in some stuff. I just can't. Losing Matt Milano and those 2 safeties who are your 3 main communicators on defense, and then you're replacing who's calling plays, and the talent's not as good. If the defense isn't as good, there's again even more pressure on Josh. I just worry that at some point you're going to put so much damn pressure on this dude that it's impossible for him to be a fixer of every single thing around him. Like we talk about the Chiefs a lot. Hey, they got rid of Tyreek, and Kelce was in the garage for the first 12 weeks of the year, and they were ugly winning games or not winning games. Like, dude, that defense is one of the 3 or 4 best defenses in the league with an elite coordinator, and they're holding teams to 17, 20 points max. Yep. I just don't know if the Bills defense is going to be as good, and if they're not, they're going to need Josh to be even better, and you have less talent. It makes me concerned that they're not quite the team. They're maybe more the 5 or 6 seed than they are the 2 or the 1.
Yeah, and obviously the idea of the idea of having to go through Buffalo in January is daunting for anyone. So home field is one of those. That's one of those places that matters. Just quickly on that, Bobby Babich is going to be. He's the new defensive coordinator. Sean's letting him call plays. We'll see how long Sean lets him call plays. Sean called the plays last year after the weird thing with Leslie Frazier, where Leslie went away from football. They didn't say he was fired, but he was fired.
That was weird.
Yeah. And quickly on that, like Von Miller, paid him a ton of money, reworked his deal. He obviously was nowhere near. He was having a great year 2 years ago. Then he gets the knee hurt, and he was not even remotely close to being that guy. He's a $23 million, $24 million player this year for them, based on how they could rework the deal.
They did as much as they could.
They did is they gotta get something out of him. They didn't get nearly enough out of him last year.
3 tackles last year. It's insane.
Yeah, insane. And then that brings us to the Jets, who I believe, even if Aaron Rodgers is not the Aaron Rodgers of 3 years ago or even 2 years ago, that if Aaron Rodgers is even the Aaron Rodgers of of that last year in Green Bay, that with the talent they have, if they can stay relatively healthy around him, this is a team, because of their defense first and foremost, that should win the division. It's been a long time. There's a lot of pressure. We know that market eats its own. There is an inordinate amount of pressure, but I think they have that talent. I mean, last year, they were 3rd in DVOA on defense, which makes a lot of sense. Awesome defense, right? One of the best in football, has been for the last couple of years. They were 32nd in offensive DVOA. Again, just get to average with Aaron Rodgers, which I know people in New York want more than that. People in Jersey want more than that. But even if it's average and the defense remains the same, there's a dramatic turnaround. 7-10 becomes 12-5, 13-4. Like, that's in play if they can get that and they can stay healthy. So I look at that part of it. And then it leads me to the other part. Robert Saleh. The bullseye's on you now, brother. Aaron said it in the offseason. If we don't win games this year, if we don't win big, people are losing jobs. Aaron's probably not the person losing the job. So it's Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh. Saleh's built a great defense. It's been fantastic. You've witnessed it up close and personal. The offense has been disjointed. Obviously, the Zach thing didn't work. Last year was the poo-poo platter of quarterbacks with Zach and Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian. as you tried to patchwork something after the Aaron Rodgers injury. I don't know if he's a good coach or not. As a head coach, I don't know. I know he's a good defensive coach. I don't know if he's a good head coach. And now, for the first time, and it would have been last year, but Rodgers gets hurt, so you get the get out of jail free card. This year, it's on him to find out if he's a good coach. So I just think there is a crap ton of pressure in a place that generally creates a crap ton of pressure. There's a lot there on the New York Jets.
I think this is the most talented Jets roster in 15 years, 14 years. And I think that's
since the Rex team.
Yeah. Since the 2010 Rex team that went up to New England, and, they were 11 win team, and they were the Super Bowl favorite leading into the year. And they, were a bad first half away from going to go play Aaron Rodgers in the Super Bowl. And all those guys feel like they would have cakewalked through that Super Bowl. In 2009, Chris Jenkins and Damian Woody get hurt, and it's like you're up big at, they get it at Peyton World and the whole thing. Like, the Jets haven't hosted a playoff game since 2002, which they beat Peyton 41-0. Peyton makes a lot of jokes about the Jets, so I think it's fair to give him back a little bit of crap.
Yes.
Bill Simmons talked about this a little bit, and we talk about the Jets, and they've been awful the last 14 years. There is no question. They had the 1 year in 2015. They've had some exciting wins and moments last 2 years. They've had big time wins. They've beaten the Bills back-to-back times at home. They beat the Eagles last year. That's a big win. They've had impressive wins. They just have not been consistent in the quarterback play, the offense, etc. The offensive line, I think, was the biggest question mark going into last year. I think anyone that didn't think the Jets were going to be good was like, hey, outside of Garrett, a receiver, and the offensive line is a problem. Well, the Jets invested pretty much all their free agency dollars in receiver and offensive line. And Tyron Smith looked awesome in camp. He'll miss time, I'm sure, at some point. John Simpson had a really nice camp. He's a guy who they brought in for low-level starter money, but had a nice year last year in Baltimore. Again, a few too many penalties probably, and that I'm sure that'll persist at some point this year. But they've changed the scheme. They're going to be a power running team that a lot of play action, a lot of power running, 12 personnel. They want to kind of smash you in the mouth a little bit. 2 running backs. They go out, Joe Tippmann year 2, Elijah Vera Tucker back, and then Morgan Moses, a guy who they draft Olu Fashion. They invested heavily in this offensive line for both top end talent and depth. Tight end room's fine. Tight end room's solid. You go out, get Mike Williams. They draft Malachi Corley. They put a lot of resources into this offense this offseason. Again, they bring in Tyrod Taylor to kind of be a fall safe, in case Rodgers misses time at all. They kind of, have changed around some of the responsibilities of Nate Hackett and different things there. They talked to Arthur Smith and, a bunch of other guys around the league. There was the weird week where everyone was like, is Mike Vrabel going to coach the Jets and all that stuff. But I can tell you, I've been at camp a lot, and Rodgers has looked just as good as I've ever seen him. And I'm not just saying that. I know it's practice, and we'll see what happens in the games. But him and Garrett Wilson are every single time they throw the ball, it's a completion. Garrett looks fantastic. His body looks better. Breece Hall's year 2 off the ACL. They're going to, those 2 guys will be top 10 fantasy picks and in everyone's leagues. And Rodgers' arm looks awesome. The whole thing, the defense is amazing. I think we'll see what happens with Hassan Reddick. We've talked a little bit about that, but they've developed guys nonstop. The cornerback room's fantastic. DJ Reed might be a step worse this year. Michael Carter will be a step better. Again, there's a lot. It's just the roster's really good, and there's a lot of pressure. And the Jets changed up a lot of the way they operated in camp this year. And we've talked a little bit about it around the league, is that the Jets hit a lot this summer, a lot. They had more of an old-fashioned camp. Rodgers said this is the hardest camp he's been a part of in a decade. Quincy Williams said he hasn't had a camp like this since he was in wrestling in high school. And, and they're not just, this isn't just lip service. It's been a plan from the beginning of, hey, every year we go into the season, everyone's healthy, and immediately everyone gets hurt. And again, that might happen again. We have no freaking clue, right? We don't have a crystal ball, but if this team's healthy, I think they're the most talented roster in the division. And I'm not sure I don't think it's that's an crazy thing to say.
You're not talking about crazy.
And I think if Rodgers is anywhere close, if he's 85% of MVP Rodgers, he's a top 10 quarterback in the league with a top 10 defense and probably a top half league offense, which means the Jets are probably going to win 11 to 13 games. That's just the reality of it. And they're the 4th easiest schedule in the league. There's a lot in there. And I think if they get out to a hot start, they're going to be in a pretty damn good spot where, I don't know, maybe there's they're playing Arizona week 12 and like they're 9-3 and Rodgers has a sprained ankle and they don't want to have him play. And like, oh, Tyrod has to play one game for us. It's a much better spot. So I think this division finishes Jets, Buffalo, Miami, who are all playoff teams in my opinion. And then I think New England's probably picking the top 3, but I think that we'll feel pretty decent about where we're at with Drake May going into year 2.
It's fair. The one other thought I had on and you mentioned they've done a great job of developing pass rushers, but if Reddick, whatever happens there, Bryce Huff was a big loss. Bryce Huff is a really good player. So whether it's Will McDonald, whether it's Reddick, again, I always worry about guys, as I've mentioned, like not practicing. Your guy,
Jermaine Johnson.
Yeah, and then all of it. Yeah, Jermaine. I love Jermaine. So there's the pieces there to be able to make up for the lost pass rush. But they're a fascinating team to me. They're going to be in prime time a lot. We're going to be talking about them a lot because they should be one of the better teams in the National Football League, again, depending on health. We're going to go transfer now. We're going to take a look at the NFC East. But before that, I've got to tell you about GameTime.co, not GameTime.com, GameTime.co. You and I both, we love football. But this is everything's going on right now. And I'm sure you've got tickets, places that you want to go, things you want to see this fall beyond the Jets.
Yeah, beyond the Jets, we got hopefully some Yankees playoff games coming up. The Yankees Royals big series, coming up in 10 days time, could be an ALCS preview. The Red Sox making a playoff push. I can't believe the Yankees Royals is even a conversation.
I know, right?
Basketball's coming back soon. Hockey's coming back soon. NFL, college, you name it. No better place to be than using our good friends.
Yeah, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time, game tickets, whatever. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS, because you like money, and this is free money, for 20% off your first purchase. Again, CLNS for 20% off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code. Again, spell it out. CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today for last-minute tickets. Lowest prices guaranteed. All right, to the NFC North. East, rather. Might get it right. The NFC East. Washington. And I 4-13 last year, 31st in DVOA. They blow everybody out. Dan Quinn's the new head coach. Cliff Kingsbury is your offensive coordinator. We know Dan will, he's the defensive guy. He'll be calling the defensive plays. And, Dan's defenses are aggressive, but they do what they do. They were 31st last year, Washington, pre-Dan Quinn. In DVOA, I expect that number to change because that guy, his head would pop off if they had a 31st DVOA in defense. That said, I think they're going to stink. It's funny when I looked at this too, Will, when they drafted Jaden Daniels, I'm like, okay, well, you got Terry McLaurin, who's, he's not elite, but he's a damn good receiver. Dotson will make the leap. He's a first-round pick. I like the guy coming out. He's had moments in his first 2 years. Now he's got someone who likes to push the ball down the field. That's a good fit for him. They traded Dotson in the division, by the way, which, again, just sort of blows you away. They had to attach a fifth-round pick to get a third-round back from Philly. So not even – that tells you how far his stock's developed. And now I look at their pieces and I go, so it's Terry McLaurin and what else? Brian Robinson's a nice little running back, right? Physical, got to stay healthy, but he's a good player. They picked off Noah Brown off the scrap heap. He might start for them. They just picked him up. He might be a starter for them. I just wonder, for all that they did this offseason, for all the money that they invested in, they signed a lot of veteran guys, culture tone-setting guys. I don't know what kind of culture you're going to have when you're losing every single week, and I think they could be losing a lot more than they win this year. 4-13 last year, 4-13's in play this year, maybe even worse.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it. We talked about this, and I'm sure people are like, dude, all you do is talk about is what's this year going to be a success. Jaden Daniels is a guy who I think there's really high expectations for, and the numbers in college, specifically last year, looks pretty good in the preseason. Again, take that with a grain of salt. Obviously, I'm more worried about the fact that I think they know they're going to suck, and I think that's fine. And Dan Quinn's a guy who's a program builder. Like if you're playing NCAA football and what trade are you? He's a program builder. That's who he is. His defenses are very feast or famine, and we've seen that with Dallas. We saw that with Atlanta. Their team, they ride high and low, and they get good athletes on the field. And he plays 800 different defensive backs and linebacker and safety and corner, and edge rushers get big numbers. Guys get paid, and the whole thing. I'm a huge Dan Quinn fan. I get it, but outside of Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, the offensive line has some questions. The running back room is Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler, who didn't go back to the Chargers because he didn't want to carry the football 250 times, which I couldn't believe he said out loud. Love Eckler, but last year was really bad. He was awful last year. I don't know. He was hurt, and I get it and all that stuff. But the run against the Packers, and everyone has a Twitter account has seen it. It looked like there was a truck on his back, and I feel he had a hamstring thing. I get it. It was really concerning to watch. Defensively, they've shed some weight for sure. I think they've gotten faster, and I think they have a chance to be decent. But I don't know. I don't. Bobby Wagner's 5 years past being good, and I like the Frankie Louvu signing. That's one that I'm really excited about for them. Allen is still an awesome player, and all the different stuff. And Payne's a great player. There's some pieces there that they could be spunky, competitive, et cetera. I think they'll probably be a 5 or 6 win team. They'll have a game where they'll push Philly really hard, or they'll push Dallas, but they'll get blown out a couple of times. I just think this is all about 2025 for Washington. Adam Peters in there, get an eval on, get a full eval for a year on where you're at as a roster. See how the quarterback is. What pieces are you going to invest in and build around? And I just wonder, are they the weird Ayuk team? I just think that's been the weird, Ayuk and Daniels somehow played together, which is insane that,
right.
Jay Daniels, I talked to a guy, a player in the league that played Jay Daniels. He's like, I played him as a freshman and I'm on my second contract. It's kind of insane. But again, I think they know they have the coach. I think they know they have the GM, at least for right now. This kind of feels like the least pressurized spot maybe in the entire league. The biggest talking point around Washington right now is hey, their new owner wants to go back to being called the Redskins.
Right.
That's cool. I don't know. I just, for me, again, I know I'm kind of rambling here. Maybe they'll finish third, and maybe they'll surprise some people because Jaden's so damn good and the Giants are an absolute abomination. There's a chance of that happening, but I kind of feel like they're a 5 or 6 win team that we go next offseason and say, okay, do they get the left tackle? Do they get the receiver? Similar to what we were talking about with New England. Do they get the premier edge rusher? Because whatever, they spend a boatload of money. That's where they feel I don't know. I don't think they're there yet. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think they're going to be your point. If Daniels is that good, and some people think he can be that good right away. Chris Collinsworth called him a superstar, by the way. A little premature on that, Chris.
I'm not sure he's a superstar yet. He might be, but
But yeah, it's about the development. They mirror the Patriots in a lot of ways, right? Find the young quarterback. You don't think you have enough at wide receiver. There's no real blue chippers on. You want to talk about blue chippers? Who's the best Patriots player? Barmore probably would have been. Gonzalez has a chance to be, right? Who's the best player in Washington? Well, eventually you hope it's Daniels. You hope it's going to be Maye in New England. But other than that, it's Teron Payne and Jonathan Allen, and they're probably not quite at that level anymore. So they need more. They need a lot more. And that's why you finish where you did last year, get the second overall pick. And that's why you're going to be probably picking in the top 5 again this year. You mentioned the Giants. Last year was a pretty disastrous season for them. After Brian Daboll's first year, you make the playoffs. They're trying to build on the good vibes. They gave Daniel Jones the contract. And that obviously was a debacle for a lot of reasons. In part, the offensive line was terrible. 28 sacks in his first 5 games last year before the neck injury popped up. Comes back. I think he played a half, and then he blew out the ACL. So coming off some major injuries, they were 6-11 last year. They were 30th in offensive DVOA. I believe Daboll is a really bright offensive coach. So that should tell you something about the overall quarterback play. The offensive line play was terrible. They clearly made attempts to address that. Runyon they signed. Jermaine Ewan, I can never say his name. They signed him. They just added someone else that escapes me. But other than left tackle and Andrew Thomas, none of those guys are anything more than average players at their best. Evan Neal was a first-round pick, top 10 guy who's been a debacle since he's got there, just hasn't, injury problems, hasn't performed that well. They add Malik Neighbors, so they get Daniel Jones a weapon. But again, they're still not very good at receiver position. I have a hard time talking myself into a bounce back year. I just don't think it'll be as bad as it was last year, strictly because you knock on wood, you hope you have a full year of Daniel Jones. And even if we know what his peak is probably at this point, like if you get what you got in Dable's first year, then you're competitive and you're in a lot of these games. And then you add Neighbors, who I think we all believe, could just be one of those turbocharged wide receivers that have come into the league in the last few years, like Jamar Chase, like Justin Jefferson. Like, it's not out of the realm of possibility when you look at their overall talent and maybe their need to have to throw it a lot, that he gets 180 to 200 targets. Like that could be that kind of year for him. They're trying to patch a lot of things together and just I don't have a good vibe about them,
Yeah, obviously Prize Picks probably doesn't offer this, but what would your odds of Bill Belichick's the Giants coach this time next year?
I might put the odds higher for the next team if the next team goes wrong. But yeah, that would be one of a handful of teams that you would say would make a lot of sense.
It's always been the one job he wanted, he never had.
He loves it. He gets emotional about it.
The Mariners love him. And my thing is with the Giants, what's difficult is I'm not sure they have the right coach, and I'm not sure they have the right quarterback. And the GM gets a lot of praise. I don't know. When you win right away, this is what happens. If you win year one, you buy yourself like 3 years.
Yep.
But, Dable is weird, man. Like the Belichick tree guys, the first year are always good. Mangini, Flores, obviously Dable, the list goes on and on. Vrabel and all this, even though Vrabel is not a Belichick tree guy, which is part of why he's been a good coach. All these guys, even, going back to like Charlie Weiss and Romeo, like no matter where they go, the first year, that's always awesome. You're like, dude, this is going to be amazing. And then year two, it usually sucks. And year three is even worse. And Dable lost a bunch of weight and he seems rejuvenated, and they add some talent, they add Neighbors, and they revamp half the offensive line, which should be much better. I don't know that they're going to be good, but they should be at least top 20.
Deplorable.
Not deplorable, which they've been they've been one of the worst 2 or 3 lines in the league for 2 or 3 years now. And they lose Saquon, and I guess hey, Saquon's not 100% the same player he was 2 years ago. Singletary's a nice back. Like the thinking there. Again, Neighbors, the tight end group's decent, I guess. The receiver group's okay. Obviously, Neighbors has a chance to be special, and there's that. Sometimes these guys kind of fall out of favor when they you can't lose again this year. And then Dable was coach of the year. And again, I'm not saying he's not a good coach. I think he's a really good offensive coordinator, offensive coach. I think he's had his times as being a good head coach, but he's also he embarrassed Daniel Jones a lot last year. And I felt like the Cowboys game, leaving him in, and just a couple other moments where you're like, dude, the Seahawks game where it's like, yeah, Jones might not be good, but you're eviscerating this kid. And I don't know if this is the right move. He doesn't seem like that's really helping. And then defensively, the whole situation with Wink Martindale and Dable, and their front seven's really good. The Giants' front seven is one of the 6 or 7 best front sevens in football. Dexter Lawrence, Thibodeau is a nice player. I don't think he's ever going to be a star, but I think he's a good player. I think Burns is a really good player. I don't know if they're both stars, but they're both good players. The linebackers are good. The back four is pretty bad.
Yeah.
We watched them last week with the Jets, and they're getting cornerback 2 is a problem. Deonte Banks has got some nice moments. I'm not sure I think he's more of, maybe he'll be a 1 in the league. I think he's probably more like a high end 2, which is totally fine. That's not a bad thing. I don't know if they have their elite guy or even a competent guy next to him. So the Giants, to me, feel like their ceiling's 8 or 9 wins. I feel like they're kind of similar to the team they were 2 years ago. They get, they win some tight games. They get a little lucky. Hey, the defense is awesome. The corners that we protect the secondary. We get to the pass. There's so much. Dexter Lawrence is ruining games, and like Malik Neighbors is a star, and we win 9 games. There's the chance. But they're probably more like a 6 or 7 win team that you're going, we're not picking high enough for the quarterback.
What direction are you going?
What are we going? Are we going another offensive lineman that we've invested like $1 million in assets in? Do we just try to build a corner up? Like, what do we do? So for me, Washington, the Giants are both like, there's a path to them making the playoffs. They both is for both those teams. Like the fan base should have the expectation, can we get a 7 seed? Like there's a real thing there for different reasons. It's more likely to me that Washington's picking the top 7 and the Giants are picking the top 10. It's just, that's kind of how I see it at the moment, at least.
Yeah, just quickly, I wanted to add, so they hired Carmen Brasillo, who was with the Patriots and the Raiders, did a decent job with, again, a sort of a not nearly, not a talented Raiders group, and that's where Jermaine ends up coming over from. And Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator, worked with Mike Vrabel. He was a DC with Tennessee. I like some of the things that Shane did. We'll see now whether it was Shane who did those things or if it was Mike Vrabel who pushed Shane in that direction. But yeah, you're right. The front 7 is good, but the back 4 is rough. To the Cowboys. You could make the debate that the Cowboys should be over Philly. You can make the debate the other way. I'm going to make the debate the other way. Cowboys were 12-5 last year. A really good season. 4th in DVOA, 9th offensively, 5th defensively. As I mentioned, Dan Quinn no longer with them. They replaced Quinn with Jerry Jones' fave, Mike Zimmer, who's about 952 years old and still ornery as can be and still can coach defense a little bit. So he's going to push those guys. Deron Bland has a foot injury. It's going to cost him about 6 to 8 weeks as they roll into the season. So they're hoping to have Diggs and Bland side by side, both of them having, great ball production numbers. Something's going on here. Hang on one second. Random fan making noises that shouldn't be making noises. So you have that. But to me, big picture wise, it comes down to like they've been good and you think they should be better. And now the talent has started to erode a little bit. They've lost pieces. This was supposed to be, remember, Chip's all in. You know, he's going all in this year. And then what do? They don't add anything. Like it's their off season was about as bland can be, at least in terms of a player acquisition standpoint. Now, off the field stuff with the contracts has been nuts. So if they finally get CD Lamb done, Micah Parsons, nothing's happened there. You know, they still have Parsons under team control for multiple years. And then, of course, letting Dak Prescott roll into what could be his final season in Dallas without a contract and knowing that there's $60 million plus a year somewhere else probably out there for him. You put it this far. I don't blame them in a sense because Dak hasn't gotten over the hump. At the same time, who's the replacement? Because we saw Trey Lance this summer, and it ain't Trey Lance. So there's a lot of pressure. Mike McCarthy's in the final year of his contract. Speaking again of like, just okay, you're coaching for your job, you're playing for your job, or playing for your next contract. You went down this road with Lamb, where again, terrific player, but like I do wonder about guys and coming back without having played football. So I don't know. 12-5 seems like that's going to be hard to attain this year.
Yeah, Dallas is interesting because the roster, if you put up, it's a 5-a-side for people who watch soccer. It's like, 5-a-side, how you pick your best 5, goalie, 2 midfielder defensive guys, 2 attackers. Like Dallas is 5-a-side, as good as anybody in the league. And, hey, we'll go Dak, Micah, Zach Martin, CD, and the whatever you want to go, any of the whatever Diggs or any of these other guys. The Cowboys running back room sucks.
Yeah.
And it just got worse because they just signed Dalvin Cook, who is as washed gets, and Dalvin's a good dude and all that stuff. He's cooked. And Zeke, you've watched the last couple of years, I think is still a productive NFL back in a very specific role. Third downs, short yardage, pass pro and stuff. But he is as your lead back potentially. And like Deuce Vaughn's a great story, but he's 5'5", and like until we see it, I don't know. Like Jake Ferguson, I don't think he's awesome. I think he's a good player. Brandon Cooks, we'll see. Like he's always been productive anywhere he's gone, but again, we'll see what happens again with him. Jalen Tolbert,
You're not buying the Jalen Tolbert
maybe,
buzz?
maybe, but this is going to be like CD's going to get 195, 210 targets. And if he goes down for any period of time, even with an ankle for a week, what are they really doing there? I love Tyler Guyton. He's not Tyron Smith. Zach Martin is obviously awesome. Tyler Smith's been a great draft pick. The Cowboys develop offensive linemen, but they did lose kind of the entire right side of their offensive line, and they lose their center. They lose, they lose a guard, they lose a tag. It feels like to me, they lose McGovern. And then defensively, you mentioned Bland being out. I think Zimmer's going to be really good. I actually think that it might be better long term for them. I think short term, the way Dan Quinn early in the regular season plays defense is unbelievable. But when it gets in the playoffs, when you kind of are who you are, and Zimmer's great at adjusting, and Rodgers just talked about Zimmer's the hardest guy he's ever gone against, that the 8-man up, and you don't know who's dropping, who's coming. And this is the guy who's probably one of the 2 or 3 smartest players we've ever seen. Say it's the hardest. So I think he'll help. Who's playing linebacker for them? Eric Kendricks, who's 2 years removed from being 2 years removed. And no disrespect, like he's still like a good player, but he's not Eric Kendricks of the 2017 Vikings defense. And, that was a long time ago. Micah's amazing, but Micah's worn down a little bit as seasons have gone on. He's gotten hurt or he's worn down. So I think Dallas is a playoff team, but I don't know. I think they're going to need Micah to be a superhero and Trey Diggs to look really damn good and Bland to come back and be, create turnovers, and it's a hard schedule. And and McCarthy's a good coach, not great. There's a lot there that's they might be still really good, but no one cares until they win playoff games.
Yep.
And the problem is that for me, what if it goes bad early? What if they start out 2-5 or 2-4, and it's a couple of really tough losses? They're 2-4, they're a really good team still, but that seat gets hot for Mike, and is Dak the guy? And those conversations will start quickly. And I just am nervous for them because I think, again, this team is really good. It is. I'm not questioning them being good. And I think if all goes right, they could win the title. They really could. They're that good, but we haven't seen them finish the job ever. And it's my lifetime. I mean, they haven't finished. They finished the job once, and so I'm 30 years old now. You know what I mean? Not that I always give Kyle credit, but Kyle Brandt talks about this all the time. He's wake me up in January with the Cowboys, because we know they're awesome. Not to take anything away from them, but man, the roster's a little lighter than it's been in years past, and they're going to need Tyler Guyton to be good right away. And he was a project guy that everyone was Brandon Thorne came on my other show and said, I love Guyton, first round guy, but he shouldn't really play right away. And now he's your franchise left tackle.
He's playing right away.
Yeah, he's playing. So, like I said, Dallas to me is a playoff team, but it's not in years past where it's hey, are they the 1 seed? To me, it's who are they on the road against? In Wild Card Weekend. Yeah,
I would agree. And it's interesting because of the Jerry Jones, Bill Belichick love fest. If they're 2-5, you might hear Bill's name. Now Jerry doesn't like to pay coaches, and Bill likes his money, but that'll be interesting. That leaves us with Philly, who I think 10-1 to start last year, and then finished 11-6, and there was dissension in the ranks. You demoted your OC, you demoted your DC. Matt Patricia got prominently involved as the DC at one point. It was a disaster. So Nick Sirianni, they let him sit there for a week with the Belichick rumors, right? Howie Roseman and Belichick.
I would have fired Sirianni.
I appreciate the they were in the Super Bowl a year prior, but the dissolution is concerning. And now you're they're doing photo ops, he and Jalen riding around in the golf cart together. Feels like they're trying too hard to make it seem like everything is okay. Meanwhile, they hire Kellen Moore, and Kellen's basically the word is on the street that Sirianni's been told, stay out of that room, let them do their thing. Kellen Moore comes in with a different offense. Sirianni, the way he likes to play offense is very static, not a lot of motion. You give Jalen the run pass option, and it's if they're playing press man on the outside, dial it up. Let's throw it down the field to Devontae or AJ, which, I don't blame them. I'd do that too. this is going to be a little bit more. There's a lot more movement, and there's a lot of pieces to it. I think Jalen, the quote this summer that kind of took people was, it's about 90% a different offense than what we're used to running. You're like, 90? Okay, that's a lot. And Hurts didn't, as it went downhill, Hurts didn't perform very well. So they gave this guy a ton of money, and I'm going to be honest. After the Super Bowl, I bought in. I'm like, this dude. Now I'm like, you know what? The Patriots didn't think very. Let's put it this way: a bad Patriots team in the opening week of the season gave Philly fits in Gillette. Now, first week of the season, you have all this time to plan. Talking to people on the defensive side of the ball, people that helped craft that plan for Jalen Hurts, they didn't think much of Jalen Hurts. And so here I was, like, going into the season like he's the top 5 quarterback, like he's gonna be around for a long time. Patriots made him look kind of bad. Mac Jones looked worse, and that's really in essence where the game was decided. But 24 points, kicked a lot of field goals, didn't look right. Didn't look like it did the year before. And by and large, that's how the whole season played out. Even at 10-1, people in Philly were writing, people were talking. This doesn't look like the same team. We don't look as explosive. He doesn't look as good. There were injuries, certainly. He dealt with his share of injuries last year, and that can affect someone as mobile and physical as he is. Okay, now you've reset the whole thing. You've reset it with Kellen Moore. And then the one piece that's not getting talked about nearly enough, Jason Kelce retired. Jason Kelce was
my brain right now. This is impressive.
He was still the best center in football last year. Like, he handled everything for them. There's the widely for people that are like football nerds or whatever, it made the clip on social last year, and it's been brought up a lot here in the offseason that Hurts tried to change something at the line of scrimmage, and Kelce looked back at him and was like, no, don't do that. I've got this. You worry about what you're supposed to do. I'll take care of this. That's how good a brain he has. Never mind the physical talents, even at his age, to play at that level. You don't just replace that. They drafted Cam Jurgens. They like Cam Jurgens. But there's one Jason Kelce. He's going into the Hall of Fame whenever he's eligible for it. So that's massive, because if you let Jalen just play and let him handle the rest, takes a little bit off your plate. You'd like to do that. Granted, he got paid, but he's still a young quarterback. You'd like to do that. I don't know that they have that luxury this year. You add Barkley, which is obviously, they looked at the market and said, that's a really good player. The market's gotten stupid for running backs. We can pay that guy. But now that's a lot of mouths to feed, because Hurts gets his touches. Smith, AJ, Zach Goddard's a really good football player. Now you add Barkley to the mix. That's a lot of mouths you've got to feed. And if Hurts is having a problem sometimes relating to his own guys, never mind his coaching staff, I don't know, just one of those things that you file away from all the stories that we got here in the last couple months about what went on there, and you file it away and say, it's a lot of pressure on him. There's a lot of pressure on Nick. It's, basically, not only do you have to win in the regular season, but you better win a playoff game or two. Otherwise, you might be out. Like, there's just a lot there for a team that, again, still really talented. There's really a lot of good pieces on that football team, a lot of blue chip talent on that football team, but there's a lot of pressure on them as well.
Yeah, I don't think they have the coach, personally. I think they made a bad hire as a defensive coordinator. Personally, I think Fangio is one of the most respected and one of the best defensive coordinators we've seen in this generation. Unfortunately, similar to his Broncos defenses, which we talked about, those are 6-7 years old at this point. At the very least, we're talking Fangio back in the 2015 Peyton. That was when they were amazing. But the whole league adopted the scheme, so it's not like it's a unique scheme anymore. And the league's kind of gone away from that a little bit, and everyone either runs it or they run some kind of form of cover 3 quarters. And similar to like everyone hired the Belichick trees. Defensive guys, and they ran it, and it was amazing for a little while. And then they did that with Baltimore with Rex and all. It's like we go through these cycles, and I just think Fangio's had a hard time relating to players. They signed Bryce Huff, who I'm the biggest fan of, and I think he's going to be awesome. He's probably have 12, 13 sacks. He'll make a Pro Bowl this year. But like Fangio is like in his opening press conference, like, I don't know if he's a 3-down player. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, this doesn't need, like, these guys, a lot of players in the NFL definitely need a little harsher love at points. I also think you need to say nothing publicly, and you say that behind closed doors. I think the thing where I'm interested with Philly is I'll touch on the offense in a second, but defensively, Darius Slay's 33. James Bradbury, I think got hurt this morning actually, but stuck on the
6 to 8
roster.
weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. They're talking no surgery, but
Cooper DeJean, I think I like Cooper DeJean a lot. We'll see what he is in the NFL. I don't really know. I think there's like a lot of like, is he a corner? Is he a safety? Is he a nickel guy? What's he going to be? I think he'll be good, but I don't know. We haven't seen a white corner be good in the NFL in like 25 years. So
Jason Sehorn, right?
Yeah, Jason Sehorn. Yeah, proud of USC, and Randy Moss ruined his career with his pants falling down back in.
I love this. Is he still married to what's her name? Yeah, I loved her.
Yeah. He's
anyway.
Look,
just a random aside.
No, I don't know what the Eagles defense is going to be like. Are we going to get? We our first pod. You mentioned like, could this be a breakout year for Jacoby Dean? Like defensively,
early review is not great, by the way.
Yeah, I know it might have been. My early reviews might be good. I might be want to know here with my Michael Carter pick, but although he missed all of camp with an injury, so he's back now. But Jordan Davis, like, what is he at this? What are we gonna? Is this going to be the year? Is it going to be
changed all their? By just a random, they changed all their sports science. Because they were like, those guys all wore down. Now, granted, Jordan Davis not exactly in the best physical condition, as he's a massive human being, but like Carter faded near the end of the year. Carter for the first 9-10 weeks was one of the best defensive linemen, period. Never mind rookies in football. So yeah, very interesting the approach that they've taken this offseason.
Yeah, like Carter, what's Nolan Smith going to be? Obviously Bryce Huff, no more Reddick there. So I just am interested in the Philly defense. They were obviously so special 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Last year, they fell off a lot. I think they were a defense that not as publicized, but was pretty bad. At points, they got after the passer, but that was it. Are they going to be the same defense? What's that going to look like? And then offensively, AJ Brown's awesome, very temperamental, but is awesome. Devontae Smith is one of the most underrated players in the league. They paid him. That was unbelievable business. As you mentioned, there's a lot of mouths to feed, and they should be awesome. But I don't know. I watched Hurts in that Jets game last year, and 4 turnovers, and it was really bad. And made some special plays, a couple special throws, broke out of a couple sacks, but also some pretty stupid turnovers, and they end up costing the game. I think the Jason Kelce point is the offensive line should still be good, no doubt. They were a step worse last year, but they should still be awesome. Tush Push was their best play, and it's the most effective play in football. And are you running that still with that effectiveness? The Jason Kelce was that's a lot of Jason Kelce. That's not just Jalen Hurts being a tank. So again, I think Philly will win this division, but I do not think it's good. I think this is going to be them in Dallas are 10-7 and have a tiebreaker. Philly wins it, and they host the playoff game as the 3 or the 4 seed. And I don't think I don't know. This division
has the potential. Doesn't have the potential to be a dumpster fire. As we sit here and talk it through, you're well, Washington, you're hoping that they're just, Jaden develops and, whatever. Wins are sort of irrelevant, obviously you don't want to lose them all, but it's not a big deal. The Giants, as you said, the high end is 8-9 wins, but could they bottom out? It's conceivable. Does Dayball get fired in season if it goes there's all that sort of potential. And then the 2 best teams who both have a lot of talent, even though, as I said, the Cowboys' talent has eroded. It's that could be a circus, Dak's not playing well, or Dak says, hey, we stopped talking, we're not, I'm going to go into free agency, and they'll have as good a chance as anybody else to sign me. That will set off a whole cavalcade of nonsense for a team that is covered probably more passionately by more sites than any other, it's and then Philly, we know how Philly fans, Philly media, could be a lot of hate. That could be just could be nasty in both places.
Yeah, it could be the last thing I would say the Devin White, AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts group chat of whatever that was, that we remind each other to keep each other it's called accountable. I don't know. That didn't give me Devin White's was the most overrated player in the NFL the last couple of years. So I think Philly wins the division, but I think this division overall is going to be the opposite of the AFC East and be an absolute mess. I think they might get 2 playoff teams, but it's not going to be pretty. But yeah, no, we spent an hour and 20 minutes. We had a lot to cover.
We did. Generally not going to do hour and 20-minute podcast, but the preview and obviously being in our own backyard and just some fascinating topics and teams to sort of break down. A reminder, as I mentioned at the beginning, please like, subscribe, tell your friends, leave reviews. It helps us build the brand. We're having a lot of fun doing this, and we'll get into the regular season mode. I can't wait for those Monday shows when you just sort of unpack all the things that you saw, and there's that, you get like there's an emotion to it, and you're watching film and you're grinding this and that and the other thing, but there's also just like, did you see what do you believe that just happened yesterday? I just kind of love that, being the immediacy of talking about what happens on Sundays and going into the week, because as we know, we treat all these weeks like they're Super Bowl weeks at this point, because that's how big the NFL is. Will, pleasure as always. We will see you again next week. Enjoy your long weekend. I hope you get some time off.